Alrighty, hello. Oh, I haven't got my doodah up. Hang on, got to get my video capture up. There we go. And we're up. Hello, everybody. So today, for the prompt for World Watercolour Month, the prompt is milestone, and I wanted to draw this gorgeous little koala because since the bushfires, they have achieved amazing milestones in their recovery. We've had lots of them that were rescued, be recovered, be made healthy again and re-released into the wild and sanctuaries and things. And they're rebuilding the habitat, which is also another wonderful thing that's happening. So yeah, I just wanted to draw this little koala. I'll draw and paint this little koala in watercolour. So I thought this would be a fun way to create a piece for this prompt. And these little guys are absolutely gorgeous, and I'm lucky enough to live in an area where we do have these guys locally in the wild. So I thought it'd be a bit of fun. So I'm just going to get, they're quite hard to draw because their proportions, they're odd. They're sort of flat looking. They're so fluffy, it's really hard to draw their fur. So I thought this would be a tough one, but a fun one. So I've got to try and get all these bits in his right positions. Sort of get his eyes aren't that close together. And their eyes are sort of rounded to the outside, not round to look at. Okay, so I'll erase that already. Erase that already. Like that. And then their eyes sort of come down like that. That's better. That looks better. And then his nose sort of comes around like that, and then down into his nostrils like that. And he's got his little mouth. I've got a few different references for him for koalas, so I can sort of take a little bit from each. Some are clearer than others, and I can see different details on their little faces. So sort of blocking in the shape of his little face. So I'll draw his little mouth, the bottom of his mouth in. And he's got, I like this picture because it's got beautiful light, the light's reflecting off him. And it's just so cute. So you can see the brights in front of him where the sun's hitting him. And then the darker shadows to the back, so it makes a nice contrast, which will help make it look more realistic, I hope. And they've got sort of cat's eyes, or the striped eyes. I'll draw his little thumb. He's got two thumbs. They've got sort of two thumbs on one side, which helps them grip the trees. Come down and around here. His little fat belly. I can't see the bottom of his foot, but that's okay. I've got a reference. Just realised I can't see his little bottom. I'll have to find another one. Doesn't matter. Oh, there we go. There's one. I have a photo with his bottom on it. And they've got quite unusual back feet. They've got toes that are sort of joined, which also helps them groom their fur. Oops. There we go. He's got a little lighter bum. And I'll draw his branch. I've just got to get his photo back. There he is. And his branches. Oh, and he's got his another paw coming up here. I don't like that one. I'm going to change the angle on that one actually. I can artistic license, alter things as I see fit. So I will. Hear my dog under my desk being a little grumpy bum. Alrighty. Pepper. Oi. Cheeky little poop. Alright. Okay. So he sits like that. So I get this drawing quite reasonably detailed because it'll just make it easier. Get my little back a bit wider, like that. There we go. I'll pop that up the picture a little bit. And he's got his chin comes down under here like that. These little jowly bits. And he's got lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of fur. Lots of fur. And he's paler on his little bot bot. Alright, I reckon we're good. So I'm going to start with his little eyes, I reckon. His eyes and his nose are going to be my first port of call, I think. He's got pink around his eyes. Just getting little bits of where the colour areas are on his little face in. Alright, so have a sip of my coffee, grab my brush, and we'll start with his little eyes. Grab a bit of cloth. And we're going to go in, his little eyes are a tanny brown colour, so I'm going to use transparent sienna. It's my go-to for everything colour, love it. I'm using my Schminky and my Senneliers again, as they're my fave. And I'm going to start by going around his little pupil like that. Oh, hang on, I've got the wrong. I've got my reference photo. Where's my reference? There. There we go. Alright, so I've got the lighter brown part of his eye in. I love to start with the eyes because it just brings them to life. So I'll start with his eyes and his nose. And I'll just add the little darker shadowy bits at the top now. And then I'm going to grab some Payne's Grey and I'm going to add a bit of blue to that, a bit of indigo to my Payne's Grey to darken that up, and I'm going to pop his little pupils in very gently and carefully. And they've got sort of cat's long strip eyes. The pupils are a line like that. And he's got pink around his nose, but I'm going to do, he's got a dark bit around the top of his nose, sorry, around his eyes I mean. He's got pink around the edges of his eyes and dark around the top of his little nose. So I pop that in, go around the bottom of it, and then he's got a chocolatey brown, so I'm going to go a bit of brown, a bit of blue to make a dark grey, browny grey for his nose. Perfect. And then I'm going to take that down. I'm going to leave a highlight on his nose on that side when I get to it. He's got a big highlight sort of about here, so I'll leave that there. Leave that white paper. So the first layer is going to be like that. And then come up, drag that to the sides of his nostrils, and you can just see a little bit of dark around the edge of his nostril. So pop that on like that. It comes sort of down towards his nose a little bit. I'm going to wet my brush, clean it off, take the excess moisture, and I'm going to drag that brown paint, that browny grey, into the highlight area because it's still showing the colour of the skin, but it's just a couple of tones lighter. And I've got to somehow, make a pink for in his nose. So I'm just going to go red, cad red, and just dilute that right down, just with lots and lots of water. So it's just a tint almost, just a tiniest little tint of pink, like that. And then I'm going to take that onto his chin, because on his chin he's got pink as well, because he doesn't have a whole lot of fur, just there, and he's actually got pink in his ears. So while I've got that colour mixed, I'll take the pink into his little ears as well. So I'm just using cad red, just diluted right down with a ton of water. And you can see in there he's got a bit of pink. So pop that in there. And on this ear, you can see a lot of pink on this ear. So I pop his pink in there, like that. I might give that one a bit more. Now his claws are black and dark, so that's fine. I'll leave those as they are. I'll pop a little bit of that pink. I've got to pop a little bit around his eyes, because he does have quite pink skin around, just directly around his eyes, where his fur's thin. Just in there, like that. There we go. So that's his face pretty much close to being done. I'm going to add, oh, that's my dog going back. I'm just going to shut the door. Are you staying in or are you going out? Are you staying in? Dog barking at the washing machine. He doesn't like the spin cycle. Bear Bear. Alright. So I'm now going to strengthen up the grey around the right hand side of his nostril, or his nose, not his nostril. I'm going to darken this side of his nose up a little, and around the tip of his nose. I think I'm going to shut the door so the dogs can stay out. They're being very vocal today. They're being very vocal. They stay in here while I do my art, but they've decided to be noisy little doobies today. Alright, now I'm going to wet my brush again and soften this edge on his nose. Just take those edges out like that. Rightio. Now I can get into the grey. I have no idea how I'm going to do this. So we're going to go burnt umber, cobalt blue. So it's just my usual mix for grey, and different amounts of water will make it lighter and darker. So I'm now going to add a lot of water, and I'm going to start by adding this browny sort of grey just everywhere around him. Very, very diluted, and I'll build it up from light to dark. He's got highlights on this side, but I'll just block it in for now. Because this side will be darker again. And I can actually, if I want to take back a highlight here, I can just wet that and get my cloth and just touch it with my cloth in the spot I want to lift it a little bit. I've just got to quickly get this on so I don't end up with hard lines. So just got to keep the brush moving around the paper. I could have even wet the paper first if I had wanted to and just dropped it on that way. So I'm working wet on dry. So wet brush, dry paper. And then I'll add that texture in a minute. So that's him sort of a little bit done. I'm going to try and lift out just this little bit here. So I'll take my clean brush and just rub over that bit and just take that little bit of light back, just there. And I'm going to make another grey, slightly darker. Actually, I should finish his body first. I should go right around his whole body with this same wash. So I'm going to do that really quickly. Just wet big broad brush strokes using the side of the brush. Like that. And take that right down his body, and you can see it's a very, very pale wash. I've got to stay off that, these bottoms of tawny colour. So I'll find, I've actually got to hunt out my Daniel Smith paints to do that bit, because I've got one colour that I love using for the lighter coloured fur, and it's a Daniel Smith colour, so I've got to hunt them out. I'll put them away, I've got to find them. Alright, so that's him basically blocked in. So now I can go back into the darker grey, slightly darker grey, and add, while he's still wet, I can use the paper, the dampness of the paper, to help the paint travel. Again, it's only a very thin wash. Take that down his face, because he's shadowed on this side. I'll soften that edge. Come around, leaving the little bit around the edge of his eye. Down and around here. Like that. And I'll build it up in more layers. Come around, I'll just take that down onto his back because he's in shadow here. Now the dog wants to come back. I'll let him in just a second. It's alright, Bear Bear, I'm coming. Okay. I'm coming, Bear Bear. Sausage. There you go. Alright. Grab some more of that grey. Very diluted. Take that down the bottom of his little arm and down on this part under his chin and around there on his little hand. I should have done, he's got 3 more fingers on this side. I haven't done his fingers, but I'll add them in. I can add them in. I've just realised that I'd forgotten a couple of fingers. But that's right. The wonders of art. So I just soften up these edges. So I literally just clean my brush, take the excess moisture out, and use that to drag the paint that I've already put on the paper around a little bit while it's still damp. And the same that I'm going to do here. And I'll take that down the left hand side of his little face, trying not to rest my hand in the wet paint, because that would be silly, because I do it all the time. So I'll take that down this side of his face, and it's the different tones that'll give him, and the different colour, or not colours, different tones that I'm going to use that are going to give it the 3-dimensional look in his darker areas and his lighter areas. So just around the edge of his mouth, it's very dark because he's got his little fairy bits. I can just let the watercolour travel around like that. And go slightly darker in some areas. Alright, I've got to go around his eyes very gently. Just the front edge around here. just like that. Just got to define his eyes a little bit more, but not with solid hard lines around them. Just in a couple of areas, because he is darker at the front of this one. A little bit round there, maybe a little bit under here. All right. So I'm going to add in those toes, because he's actually got, hang on, I need to look, I've got a photo of their feet. Their feet are really unusual. If you look at their back feet, they've got two toes popped together here. So I'll do that one there, but that's actually one toe, but it's got two little bits on it. So they've got very unusual, and then they've got a thumb with no claw on it to help them grip. And the front foot, this one, is 2 on that side and 3 here. So I'll draw those in. They've got very unusual little hands for gripping. Very unusual little hands. So yeah, if you research their little feet, they've got very unusual looking feet that help them with climbing. It's going to erase that little bit. Go back in with my pale grey, my brownie grey, for the first bit, and then I'll do the darker grey on top. Go back to my reference photo. And I'll darken up this side. Like that. They do have very unusual little hands. Right. Oakley doke. I might give him his background. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in just with the green. So I'm just going to clean my brush. Actually, get a bigger brush. Clean it. Make sure it's clean, like checking it on my cloth. And then I'm going to run around the outside with a very wet brush. And then I'm going to drop the green paint into that. Take it right around his little bot, because that'll help the paint travel and keep it soft looking, because that's what I like. I like the soft effect. So pop that around there like that. Wet all that paper down. So I can see, I'm looking sideways because I can see the sheen on the side of the paper. I can see how wet the paper is. All right, awesome. Okay, so now I'm going to drop in some green. I'm going to go with olive. Love olive, so we're going with olive. And I'm just going to get lots of that pigment and I'm going to drop it in and drag it round. Take it in as close to his little fairy bits as I can. See how it's running? I'll let it run. Control it a little bit. It'll go, just go wherever I put the water, like that. Go around the top of his little head, grab some more pigment. Oops, I got onto his ear a little bit there, but I can lift that off. Got to be a bit careful here. Don't want it to run all over him. All right. That green into that part of his painting, just down and around there. So concentrating a bit here, guys, sorry. And then I'm going to come around the edge of the branch. There we go. Okay. Pick up the extra little bead there, just. Alright, he's looking pretty cute. I might add a little bit more, just a little bit darker, just around the back. So I'm just going to plop in some more, a little bit darker around here, and then let that run around. Take it up there a little bit too, like that. Just blop it in here and there, just to pick up that bead. That bead's massive. I don't want quite that much. Same with there. It's very easy to lose control of watercolour. It is very easy to lose control of it. So I'm just going to, this side I'm just going to dot bits. I'm not going to do it solidly. I'm just going to do that. And blob little bits around. That'll sort of give a mottled effect, which is quite nice. I'm just going to pick up that bead. So I literally just take the moisture out of my brush with a bit of cloth and run the dry tip of the brush through the very wet paint, and it'll pick up any excess water. So I don't end up with a heavy line of watery wet paper at the edge. Like that. Alright, I might add a bit of almost pure pigment around this side. Even darker again. More, well, it's not darker, it's the same colour, just a little bit more pigment. Like that. And let that dry. That sort of gives it a tree-ish effect. Just a mottled background. Okie doke. Now I can work on the koala a bit more. So I'm going to go back in with that browny grey. I'm going to make burnt umber, cobalt blue. And I'm going to go back in. I've got to be a bit careful here. Grab a clean bit of cloth. I've got to keep my hand off the paper until that background's dry. So what I'm going to do is rest my hand sort of on here with a bit of cloth under it. And I'm going to start to darken up dark areas around, going the direction of, being careful to go the direction of his fur. And I'll start to add, leave little gaps so you can sort of see, gives the effect of fur texture. Take that down and down there. Like that. Same on this side, or I might have to let him dry a little bit. I might have to work down his little body a bit. I'll just use my hand to rest on. I'll just work on this arm. And I'll just add in, and he's very, very light underneath his tummy. So I'll just work on. Oops, a daisy. I apologise for that. That would be my dog. Again, washing machine. He barks at the washing machine spin cycle. Goodness gracious. Okay, shutting the door. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Every time the spin cycle, he barks. Okay, so just adding the fur texture down his arm. And I'll build up darker and darker as I go. With stronger textures. I'll add a bit more brown in here too. He does need a little bit more brown. He's got very light underneath there. Come around here. I've got to do the branch as well, but I need the background to dry a little bit more. Okay, so go into his little paws. And yeah, their paws are very unusually structured, especially for climbing. They've got very, you know, nature's designed them perfectly for their little lifestyles. And the habitat that they live in. Alright, mix up some more cobalt blue burnt umber. I apologise for my dog. I can't stop him barking. I'm going to add a little bit more brown to it maybe. There we go. Okay, now on this little arm, he's a bit more in shadow there. So it's burnt umber cobalt blue making this grey. Got to be careful to stay away from that background. Righto. Come down and around the side of his face a little bit. I can work up here actually. I will work up here onto his ear. Go in the direction of his fur. And the little bits of green that are on the white there, I can just go over that with a little bit of gouache to lift those whites back. It's not the end of the world. And they've got very short but very dense fur. They're very, very, very fluffy. Incredibly fluffy, in fact. Very coarse, very fluffy, very dense fur. And they're very hard to spot. We have a couple that live near us, and you've really got to look for them in the treetops. They do blend in amazingly well. They don't move much. They spend 20 hours a day sleeping, I think it is, or 21 hours a day they sleep, because their food intake is not a lot of energy. Doesn't give them a lot of energy. And they've got very slow metabolisms. So they're very slow moving creatures. And they sleep an awful lot. Alright, I'll darken up this side a little bit under his eye. Got to get some more fur texture into here because he looks a bit bared across the middle, pardon the pun. And they're a little marsupial, so they carry their young in their pouch till they're about 6 months old, and then they climb onto their backs. Oh, Bear. There's my dog. I've got a dog called Bear, and he's trying to come into the office again. He goes out, he comes in, he goes out, he comes in. All right. So I'll do the fur. He's got lighter on his little belly. So I'm just darkening the darker areas. You can see the brown starting to come through. I'm just going to open the door again. Come on then, you little terror. Little terror. I'll leave the lighter colour on the edge of his leg because the sun's sort of hitting there. And then I'll take the fur down the front of his leg. So I'm working sort of at the front to the back. So top down the front, because then you can keep, if I keep, work from left to right because I'm right-handed, it keeps my hand out of the paint. So yeah, you work, if you're right-handed, you work left to right. If you're left-handed, you should work right to left. So your hand stays out of your work and off your paint. Because I do have a bad habit of sticking my hand in my paint quite a lot. Because I don't always follow that rule. But I'm trying to get better at it. I'm trying to not stick my hand in my paint all the time. Trying. Okay, darker down here. And then he's darker in this little bit. And then it's very woolly, like almost sheep woolly around his little bot. And they've got hard little, like, what do you call it? Cartilagey backsides designed specifically resting constantly in trees so they don't hurt their little bots. So they've got really tough fur and skin on their bums. And they're really woolly around here. So I'll pop his little woolly bits in. Go a bit thinner paint and sort of model it up a bit. Leaving little gaps here and there, like that. Okay, so I'm going to do the branch now. So to do that, and I've left that his very light fur on the bottom of his bot. So I've got to try and mix up. I might actually use yellow ochre for that. Yellow ochre, because it's paler fur. But it's dirty. He's got a little dirty bum. So I'm just going to yellow ochre, very diluted, like that. And drag that around his little bot. Take that right round there, and anywhere that he's got lighter fur, I'll add that. Alright. Okay. I'll just let that dry for a second now, and I'm going to go onto the branch. So I'm going to just clean my brush and wet anywhere I want to put the paint. So I'm going to take that down there. So this is a eucalyptus tree, and it's quite very light bark, very light looking tree. And I'm just going to drop in some yellow ochre into that water, like that, and let it run down and around, like that. Take it down between his little toes and down the bottom of the branch there. And then I'm going to go in with a bit of burnt umber while it's still wet on the bottom where it's in shadow. Let that run around. Koalas I find incredibly hard to paint and draw, so I thought it'd be a challenging one. To try and do. Alright. And I'll just add just some patterny bits, bit of texture, and I'll add some purples for the shadows in underneath. So now I clean my brush again, and I'll go back onto Little Mr. Bear, and I've got to start to darken up. So I'm going to go in a bit of a stronger grey, burnt umber cobalt blue again, less water, more pigment, and I can press my finger on his little eye because it's dry there, and add a darker layer, start to get the darks and lights happening. I think I'm going to have to add a stronger pink into the ears as well. So just come down, because all this side is quite dark. The reference photo is the one that's in the thumbnail, but I haven't stuck exactly to the reference either. I have changed a couple of things just because I like to add my own touch here and there. Alright, I think I'm down here and darken that up. So now I have 3 Jack Russells in my art room. I've got Daisy, Pip and Bear. And Daisy's trying to jump on my lap. Alright, so I come down and around here. That background's pretty much almost dry. It's getting there. Alright. I can go a bit stronger into this bit here. Around the edge of his mouth like that. Down here, oops, a bit too much water. Silly Billy, make some more paint up. Burnt umber, cobalt blue. Cobalt blue. There we go. Just got to move that around a little bit. Then come down around his chin. Still following the direction of the fur. I'm using the very tip of the brush. I mean, you could do this just wet in wet and have him more, I'm sort of impressionist, but have him more impressionist and very loose, like I'm doing lots of fur texture and stuff. But you don't have to. I'm only doing that because I'm challenging myself to try and get better at drawing the fur. It's good because I know I'm not confident at drawing koalas. So what better way to challenge yourself than do something you're not great at? If you're not great at it, you just keep doing it, and eventually you improve and gain confidence. I'm trying to do that more these days. Push myself to improve and do things that I'm not confident at. So I'll come down the back of his little arm and darken that right up. And you can see it's more of a brown grey now. It's a little bit warmer. I'll add some more pure brown towards the end. So now he's darker in here. on the left hand side of his little toes. Just in there like that. And that one. I'll go dark right underneath there. Alright, cool. Okay, so I'll go onto his little tum. And like I said, I'm working left to right, so I'm working down the front part of him first. Then I'll come back onto this side. And following the direction of his fur. Come down into the darker areas. All right. Well, the dogs have now seen a cat, I think, out the front. Because we have 2 cats, 2 dogs. 2 cats, 3 dogs. And Pippi makes funny noises. Okay, I'll be shutting the door. The dogs are being very vocal. Okay, I'm just shutting the door because now the dogs are being incredibly vocal. So the door's shut. There we go. All good. Goodness gracious me. I think that's more of a bird bark. They're very vocal, the jacks, little Jack Russells. Okay, now I'm going to go back into my transparent sienna for a little bit of reddy brown. Just going to add a little bit of that down the front. His fur like that, and a little bit in there over the top just for a little bit of warmth, maybe a little bit just here. Like that. And then get my wet brush, drag it round, soften it. Alright, I'm going to go back into that red. Oops, that's a very bright red, that's not the right red. Go back into that red, dilute it, and I'm going to add that red back into his ear a little bit because his ear is darker than that. I'll drag that around. Like that. Same on that side. More at the top on that side, like that. Like that. And let that run a little bit. I might drag it to the edges there a bit more. There we go. But you can't really see it all in that ear. I'll add a little bit stronger down here too. And in his nose is quite pink. Alright, you're starting to come together, slowly. Okay, I'm going to add a bit more of that colour to his eyes as well. Not completely, I want to leave sort of lighter bits at the top. So I'm just going to add this reddy brown to the bottom part of his eyes. Like that. Very gently. It's sort of a slow process with these guys. And I'm going to go back into the Payne's Grey using the very tip of my brush and redefine that pupil a little bit more. Just the front of it. Like that. Needs to be a stronger dark than I had. That's a bit better. That's looking better. Now it's coming together. I'll darken up tip of his nose. Whoops, and I got that in the pink. That was silly. Quickly dab that off. It's fine. Take that Payne's grey around the tip of his nose, like that, and around the top. You just got to be patient. Sometimes it takes a while for things to come together, and every painting goes through an ugly phase. Every painting, and you just got to go, oh my god, it does. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, look at that, it worked. That happens just about every stream that I do. Every painting that I do, I hit the, oh my god, this is not going to work. Panic in my head, but then it works. You just got to persevere through that stage. Righto. So now I'm going to drag a bit of that just around. So I wet my brush, took the excess moisture out, and just drag that around to soften that edge, like that. Righty ho. Now a bit more. I'm going to add a bit more of that red. I'm just going to clean my palettes. I've made a mess. Of course I have. I'm always making a mess. Here we go. A bit more red. A little bit more red onto his chin, onto this part of his chin, just here, like that. And then I'll just drag that around a little bit. Oh, I've got the grey in it. Oops, a daisy. Doesn't matter. Let's lift that off because it was a little bit wet still. So I've only just done it. Silly me, but doesn't matter. Stay away from the edge of his nose a little bit. Pop a bit more of that red in there. And I'll dilute that down. I had it a little bit thick. Just take the excess moisture off my brush and pick a little bit of that pigment up. There we go. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit more of that red around the edge of his eye. Just into there. Alright, back into the brown greys. I can move over here a bit more now. Start to get onto this part of his back, following the direction of his fairy bits. I'll go back onto his head in a minute. And they're short, their fur, like I said before, is very short and dense. So I've just got to keep going in the direction of it. Down his little back. I might mix up a bit of a different grey, you know. So I'm going to clean that off my palette. Like that. And I'm going to take some of this grey back up in here and let it run sort of in the wet paint that is already there. And then same here, a bit of that stronger grey, very diluted. Drag it down with a damp brush. Like that. I might pop some on this leg in that darker area. Like that. Come into this part of his little fairy bits. I'm going to pop a little wash of that. I've got to do something with this bit. I'm not happy with this bit here. So I'm just going to darken that up a fraction. Just with very diluted grey. Like that. And I'll pop a little bit of colour up here. Not a lot, but a little bit, because he's got a little darker bit coming across here. Like that. Got to soften this bit up here, so I'm just going to go in with my damp brush, try and lift a bit of that back, just there, Looks a bit dense there, a bit too hard and rough. Just gonna, yeah, just to soften that bit, that looks a bit better. Alright, now I'm going to wet the paper down here. And drop a bit of pigment down there, like that. Drag that back down and around the back of his leg, down there. Right, sit back and have a look. Right. Then I'm going to add some more water around this back down this part and drop in a bit more of that grey down here just while it's wet and let it do its thing. Make it a little bit stronger down there. Have a quick look. So this is a bit of Payne's grey. I'll take the excess water. It's probably a little bit wet, but I've got to be careful. I'm sort of trying to build it up little by little, by little. Soften that edge up there. Right, now I've got to work on these eyes. I'm not happy with his eyes. I've got to try and figure out, I think I've got to darken up around this one. I've got to go around the edge of it. There's not enough contrast somehow, but I'll figure that out. So I'm looking at the big picture occasionally and trying to sort of figure out where things need to change. So I can start to add the darker bits on this side now. And I can add some lights back in at the end. Got a bit of gouache here. So add some more furry textures up here. I've got to do his, he's got a rim around the edge of his ear. You can't really see it on that one, but you can see it on the left one. And I've got to soften up that edge. So I'm going to darken up. Actually, I should have added water to that. So I'll wet it first. So I'll re-wet that a little bit. And then drop pigment into there. Just to slowly darken it up a little bit. I'm just got to soften that edge too. Soften this edge around here. So I'd clean my brush, wet it off, and then take the moisture out. I'm going to go back onto this arm. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wet that. I'm going to just blob a little bit of pigment in and let it flow. Like that. Alright, now I'm going to make some purples. Sounds bizarre, but believe me, it works. My shadow colours are purple. So I use a bit of blue and a bit of red to make my purple for the shadow areas. I'm going to take that into here. Actually, it needs to be a bit more purple than that, so add a bit more blue. A bit more blue into there. Look darker on the paper, but that's okay. So into his very darkest areas to get the strongest contrast. Blue and red. Oops, I mixed the wrong blue. There we go. Okay, mixed up a bit more, and I'm going to pop that underneath here. Clean my brush, pick up that little bit just there, because it's in shadow down there. Do his little claws. I haven't done his claws yet, so I'll do his little claws. He's got very long claws to hold onto the branch. Same on this little foot. Just do the underside of them and dab in the shadow colour. Take that down there, and then darken up the underneath. All right. I'm going to go under here with that little bit of purple as well on this side of his eye. And a little bit around here. So these are all the shadow areas. I think I've made his eyes too big. I think that's what's happened. I've made his eyes a little bit too big. But that's okay. You live and learn. That's what happens when you draw freehand. And I like to draw from I draw myself. I try to draw from my sight. Yeah, I draw what I see. And sometimes I get it wrong. But that's okay. That's what happens. And that's all a part of the learning process and experimenting process. All right. Take this shadow colour down there, go back in. Oh, I made too much water in that, so I've got to mix up another batch. I accidentally dipped my brush in too far into the water and got too much water on it. So mix up some more purple. So I'm using indigo and cad red for this shadow colour, and it's actually darker down here, coming under this, where this foot is down here on his little leg. Oops. And they've got a split toe there that's like one toe with two claws. It's like their toes are joined. It's a very unusual little back feet. Darken that right up. And then he's got his little, that bit there. Just come around his little bot. We're getting there, peeps. I'll wet the paper, drop a little bit of that shadow colour in there, let it do its thing. Same on his little back, just around here. I'll wet the paper, drop the shadow colour in, let it run around. Like that. Pick up the excess water, so I just take the moisture out of my brush, pop the brush in, and it picks it up, sucks it up, which is what I want. Put a little bit more pigment in there. Okay, let's have a look at the big screen. Yeah, I've definitely made his eyes too big. Can I change it? Maybe. Ooh, I don't know. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try and lift his eyes. I'm going to re-wet them and see if I can change his eye a little bit. So wet it, because sometimes if it's good quality paper, it's lifting a little bit. I'll be able to change his eyes, because I'm not 100% happy with his eyes. Same with this one. Just want to change the bottom of them. So I'm wetting them, and then see how it makes them a bit paler each time. So I'm just rubbing around with a wet, clean brush, and then I sponge it off. Okay, now I'll make sure that's dry. I'll sponge that right off. And I'm going to change the shape of his eye a little bit. I'm going to draw it first. Just a little bit. I think I just need to take that much. Just about that much. Let's see how this goes. This will either make it or break it, guys. We'll either wreck it or it'll get better. We'll figure that out. But you've got to see the goods and the bads. You can't just always see people's perfect artwork. You've got to see the mistakes and the corrections. Otherwise, you don't learn. So I'm showing you that I've made mistakes. And I'm going to try and correct them. Change the shape a little bit. That's actually looking a bit better, I think. Take that fur down there. Oh, I don't like that. Okay, lift that off. But I am happier with that shape. That shape is a little bit better. I did have them way too round. So now I can put the pupil back. There we go, that's better. That actually is more like their little eyes. Okay, I'm happy with that, ish, for the start, for the start of the changing it process. So it shows you can also change watercolour a little bit. There is a little, people say, you know, you can't, once you put it down, it's unfixable, but it's not. There is a little bit of room for movement. You can fix a little bit of mistakes once you've put it down, because this, and good quality paint, you can lift a little bit. If you clean your brush and you rub it, you can move it around a little bit. It does give you a little bit of room, which is really handy. But it's good for you guys too to see that you can see the process a little bit of where you can change things and how to change things. And I've just learnt it by practicing, trial and error. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you've got to have a go or you'll never know. You do wackadoo, wackadoo. All right. Okay, having a quick look. I will tidy that eye up a bit more. I've got to bring this shadow colour back down here. I've got to add some light back around that eye, and I can use a bit of gouache, which I will do. I've got to wet that a bit more, dilute that down a bit more. Get a bit of that browny grey. Just drop it into that wet paint. There we go, starting to get there. Pop a little bit of fur texture in, or just little blobs of dark grey in there. Like that. Looking at the reference, trying to figure out what to do next. Bit of dark there, and he's also got a bit darker here. Make it a bit stronger. Maybe a little bit stronger. Okay. Put these furry bits in there because they've got lots of fur over those bits. Like that. Okay, I've got a shadow up under the tree, so I'm going to go a browny grey shadow. Actually, a bit of dioxazine maybe. A bit more blue into that, make a really dark purpley colour. A bit of brown maybe, we'll see what happens. Just to brown that shadow colour off. Oh, Oh, that's a nice shadow colour. Okay, so I used dioxazine and a bit of burnt umber. And dioxazine's a very dark purple. I should test it on a bit of paper first. Yep, that's a nice dark shadow colour. I'm just going to pop that into here. Just directly under him, where he's on the tree is darker. Under there. Like that. And add that into there, onto the shadow side of the tree. Like that. I thought I saw someone walk past then, that was weird. I live on a farm, it's like no one should be walking past my window. No one should be walking past my window. Alright. And really darken up down and in here. I can sort of cut round his furry bits, and that'll make his look like his little fur's sticking out there. And then come down between his toes, down his little foot, like that. And then I've got to take that up there a little bit actually. And do the same thing, cut in to add that fur texture. Just looks a bit furrier, like that. Might lift a little bit of that off. Mind you, it is that dark, so what I'll do is I'll just put a bit of water on, and that'll just dilute that little bit there, so it's not quite so dark, and add a bit of variation in the darks, because you don't want it to be just one big fat lump of browny purpley grey. You want there to be lighters and darkers and all sorts of bits in there, so we've got a little bit of that going on. He's coming together. I'm going to actually add a bit of a warmer brown. I'm going to go in with a bit of mahogany into his eyes, because I scrubbed a lot of that off. So I'm going to put that back in there, leaving a little bit of light at the top, like that. Mahogany's a gorgeous colour. I do love it. Pop that onto the bottom of his eyes so they don't look so flat and bleh. I don't want them to look bleh. One mustn't have bleh eyes. Okay, and then I'm going to pop a little bit of that brown, that same mahogany, around his little fairy bits now, and that'll add a teeny tiny little bit of warmth, which he needs. He needs a little bit of warmth. So I'm going to pop a little bit of that. Actually, you know what I need to do? I need to wet the paper and drop it in. Just around here. Where did I stick it there? I did find it then. And pop a little bit of that. There, a little bit of the mahogany. Pop a little bit onto this part of his arm, just to warm it back up again, because anything with reds in it is a warm colour. So it's all, reds and yellows are warm, so it just gives him a bit more warmth, a bit more cuteness. I'll add a little bit down near his butt down here. So just wet the paper, grab my pure mahogany and just touch it in little blobs, and it'll dry like little tufts of fur, little dark brown tufts of fur, already brown tufts of fur. Just adds a little bit of warmth. Oops, not too, maybe not that much. Doesn't matter, it's not the end of the world. Alright, and then same down here in that part of his little leg. So I wet the paper and then drop a little bit of that brown in, and I can move it around a little bit like that. I'll just drag that back up a fraction. Okay, having a quick look. He looks cute. There's a little bit of that on his ears as well, I've just noticed. So I'll pop a little bit of that onto his ears, about here. I've got a big picture up over there too, so I can see little differences here and there. I add a bit of that over onto this one, so wet the paper there. And blob that there, like that. A quick look. I've got to add a bit of that shadow colour under that paw, under this paw, because that's in shadow there, like that, and there. And I'll just soften those edges a little bit. Like that. Alright. Look at his little butt button. Got to add some more browns into there too. So I'm going to go diluted. Actually, I should wet it. So I'm going to wet my brush, clean it, wet it, and then rub it on his little butt. And I'm going to drop in a little bit of that brown there too. Just a little bit. Just to add the variation. Just in little dots. Like that. Alrighty. Having a quick look. I've got to wet a little bit up here. Drop a bit of that brown in there. Like that. So that creates that nice modelly sort of fur effect. Alright, now I'm going to be a bit cheeky and I'm going to grab my pen and I'm going to try and add some light back around the edge of his eye. He needs to get some light back. So I've got a gel pen just to tidy up and lighten around his eye. Actually, you know what I could do? I could actually use a bit of acrylic. Where's my acrylics? Touch of acrylic paint would be ideal. Actually, I might do that. I'm going to do that. I'll grab my acrylic paints. And I'm just going to, it's still a water medium. So it may not be watercolour, but it's a water medium. I'm going to sit that there and very carefully go in with my acrylic brushes and get some lights back. I've got a beautiful Stay Wet palette. I'm just going to get some of these lights back. I don't mind mixing mediums a little bit. Oops, got a bit of yellow in that. Alright. So I can get a bit of highlight back around there. Just a little bit. Like that. Coming around there a tiny little bit. Can add a bit onto his nose. Like that. A bit onto his chest there. Clean my brush. And add a tiny little bit back. Down here on the edges of his mouth. Like that. Alright. Not even really noticeable, but I notice. Like that. Add his little highlight on there. I'm going to add a bit of fur texture out. Actually, got to grab a bit of that onto the palette. Like that. Just to soften these edges. Oops, got a big globbo on my brush. Just want to add fairy texture around the edges, just to soften that up so it doesn't look so harsh. Like that. That's a bit better. That's a bit better. Tiny little touches help. Just take that down and around the edge of his ear. That looks a bit softer. And soften up down here. Like that. And then I'll soften up a little bit around his little butt. A little bit around his butt. Soften up those edges because they don't have little hard bums, they've got little soft fluffy bums. Or fairy bums. So, actually, I need a bigger brush. That brush is ridiculous. Go a slightly bigger brush. That's not a slightly bigger brush, that's a mega bigger brush, but it'll do. Because I want to get more pigment on. I can just use, not that much maybe. I just want to soften the edges around his little bum. Like that. Hello Shane, how are you? I'm good, I'm just playing around a little bit with the watercolour month prompt. I'm just trying to soften this koala's edges a little bit. So how's your day been? What have you been up to, mate? How was work? So I'm just going to soften that edge just a little bit. Tired but good? Tired's good. Good. Glad to hear it, mate. Glad to hear it. He's not far from being done, I reckon. I'm going to soften up the top of his head. Just get this side. It's actually just help to tidy up and soften him a little. He looks like a koala. I struggle so hard with koalas. Like, I do find them hard. Of all the animals, koalas are one of the hardest for me. Bizarrely, I'm not sure why. I don't know what it is about them, but I think it's because they're so fluffy that I struggle. My friend Heather was down here for the weekend. Oh, good. Excellent. So you had a nice relaxing time? Just going to soften up. He's got bright white on there. Just that edge. Just that edge. Looking at the big screen. Yep. Okay, we're getting there. I'll add a little bit of this white back here. It was amazing to see her. Oh, good. Glad to hear it, Dale. Glad to hear it. This does not want to cover, does it? Doesn't want to be bright white. There. I want it to be bright white, but it doesn't want to be bright white. Play my brush again. It's behaving unusually. Now, where was I doing it? Adding it down here, a bit down here. There. That's better. Just in that bit. Alrighty. I managed to soften all the lines on his fairy bits down his back. Just to come onto that green a tiny, teeny little bit. I'll soften this little line here. Alright, let's have another look. I changed him from the picture a little bit just because I like to add my own little touch here and there. It's going to lighten up this top part of this branch. Just up there. Lighten that up. Like that. Move back onto the top of his little head. Just there. Where the sun's hitting him. Doesn't look bright white, but anyway, doesn't matter. His eyes look pretty good, I think. We are nearly there, peeps. We are nearly there. I'm just looking at the reference. I need to stand back and have a look. I haven't got his eyes quite right, but I think they're about as good as I'm going to get them. I'm going to go in with a bit of micron pen, because why not? Just around the front and his pupils. So around there like that. And just to strengthen up the pupils. That's better. I just need to strengthen the eyes a little bit. Come into here. Add that like that. Don't want to go solid lines, I just want it around bits of the edge, just to help define things. Got to round that off a little bit. Alright, fill in that pupil. Alright, reckon he's looking pretty good. I think we're almost there. Go under his little nose. Might add some little fairy bits in. I've got a ready brown pen here. I'm just going to add some little bits. Just because I can. Because why not? And I might just leave that there. I've got to darken up. Actually, I do have to darken up right around the edges of his little feet. So just the edges of his toenails. So I'm just going to use my micron just to get into those darkest little bits. Same on this side. Go under his toes. Just like that. Just the tiniest little suggestion. Tiniest little suggestion of dark shadows on his claws there. There we go. That just helps to define those a little bit. Alright, having another quick look. I'll add a few little textury bits around here for the long furs. Coming down and around there. Like that. Alright. I do have to try and get a little bit more white into this bit, so I'm going to use my pen. I want to just brighten white that somehow. But I reckon he's just about done, guys. What do you reckon? I reckon we're done. Just soften up some of those edges. I'm better off using the brush. Clean it. Just go around this edge. Whoops a daisy. A little bit less wet on the brush. Alright. I reckon he's just about done. Just about. I've got to pop a bit of light back here. Tiny little bit of light back on there. Take that back around that side of his little cheek. And I reckon we're going to call him done. So I'm going to sign him. Grab a bit of me watercolour, go in with a bit of purple maybe. Bit of me blue, purpley colour. And go sign him down here. And I am going to call him done for today's prompt. So, I am going to be back for tomorrow's prompt for World Watercolour Month here on YouTube. So thank you for hanging out. Whoever's in chat, you are awesome. Thank you for spending this last hour and a half with me doing this koala. It was lots of fun and very challenging because I'm not great at koalas. But I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow for another live stream for World Watercolour Month. I have no idea what I'm going to create, but I'll share that journey with you. Have an awesome day, guys and girls. Thank you, Shane, for being here, and I will see you. I'll be going over to Twitch now. I'll be having a little break, and I'll be going over to Twitch and playing some games. Okay, so anyway, have an awesome day, guys. Thank you.